The warship was beautiful in a terrible way. It moved through space like a silver blade, cutting through the darkness with cold purpose. Behind it came 200 more ships, each one perfect in design, each one carrying weapons that could burn cities to ash in seconds. High Admiral stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the human colony grow larger on the viewing screen. III was a mining world, home to 40,000 humans who dug metals from the red earth. They had built small cities there, raised children, planted gardens in glass domes. None of that mattered to a. "Begin the attack," he said calmly. They had conquered 17 star systems in 8 months. They had crushed species far more advanced than humanity. Their tactical doctrine was 3,000 years old, refined through countless wars, perfect in every way. Each formation had a name and a number. Each movement was calculated to the smallest detail. The human defense fleet at III consisted of 12 ships. They arranged themselves in a crescent formation, a standard defensive pattern that human commanders had used for decades. Studied their positions and felt something close to boredom. "Seventh configuration," he ordered. His fleet shifted like a single organism. Ships moved into positions that had been designed specifically to break crescent formations. The mathematics were simple. The outcome was certain. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, all 12 human ships were burning wreckage. The colony below sent desperate messages begging for mercy. Did not respond. His ground forces landed and began their work. 3 days later, III was empty. Its people were gone, taken to processing centers where they would serve the Empire in whatever way the Empire required. News of the massacre reached Earth within a week. The United Earth Defense Coalition called an emergency meeting on Luna Station, humanity's primary military base orbiting the moon. 17 admirals gathered in the main conference room, their faces gray with fear and exhaustion. Admiral stood at the head of the table. She was 62 years old, with silver hair pulled back tightly and eyes that had seen too many battles. Before the came, she had never lost a fight. Now she had lost 3 in a row, and each defeat tasted like poison in her mouth. "We need a new strategy," she said. "Our formations are not working. Our weapons are not strong enough. Our ships are too slow." The admirals argued. Some wanted to retreat to Earth and build massive orbital defenses. Others wanted to attack the supply lines. A few suggested surrender, though they spoke quietly and would not meet anyone's eyes. In the back of the room, sitting in a chair meant for junior officers, Commander Park listened without speaking. He was 43 years old, neither tall nor short, neither handsome nor ugly. His face was calm in a way that some people found unsettling. He had spent 20 years commanding patrol vessels on the frontier, far from the important battles, far from the admirals who made decisions about war and peace. His service record was unremarkable. He had never won a great victory. He had never lost a great battle. He had simply done his job, year after year, in the quiet corners of human space where nothing important ever happened. But had used those quiet years well. He read constantly, history books, philosophy texts, military campaigns from Earth's ancient past. He studied the wars of Napoleon and Hannibal, the strategies of Sun and. He learned how great commanders had won against impossible odds and how perfect plans had failed in the face of chaos. Now he watched the admirals argue, and he felt a cold certainty growing in his chest. Lieutenant sat beside him. She was 33 years old, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had served as his aide for 5 years, and she had learned to read his silences. "You see something," she whispered. "What is it?" Did not answer immediately. On the main screen, footage from the Battle of III played on a loop, ships moving in perfect formation, human ships dying in predictable patterns. The same story, over and over again. "They fight like machines," he finally said. "Every movement calculated, every formation optimized." That is their strength, replied. That is why they keep winning. Shook his head slowly. No, that is their weakness, they just don't know it yet. Frowned, I don't understand. They have been fighting the same way for 3,000 years. They have never faced an enemy who refuses to play by the rules. Every species they conquered tried to outthink them to find the perfect counterformation. But perfection is not the answer. Perfection is a trap. The meeting ended without resolution. The admiral scheduled another meeting for the following week, as if they would politely wait for humanity to organize itself. Returned to his quarters and spent the night studying battle footage. He watched every engagement he could find, taking notes in a small book with a pen made of real wood. He filled page after page with diagrams and questions. By morning he had not slept. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but his mind was clear. He requested a meeting with Admiral. Her aide made him wait for 3 hours. When he finally entered her office, she looked at him with tired curiosity. Commander Park, she said, reading from his file, 20 years of patrol duty, no major engagements. Why are you here? I have a proposal, Admiral. Everyone has a proposal. I have heard 40 proposals this week. None of them were useful. Placed a data chip on her desk. This one is different. Did not touch the chip. Explain. They have 47 recorded battle configurations. Each one is designed to counter a specific enemy formation. When they see how we arrange our ships, they choose the appropriate response and execute it perfectly. This is why they always win. Yes, Commander, I am aware of this. But their system requires one thing to work. It requires the enemy to fight logically. Every species they have defeated tried to find better formations, better tactics, better calculations. They tried to beat at their own game. Leaned forward slightly. And you think we should play a different game? I think we should refuse to play any game at all. His calm face showed the smallest hint of something fierce. I think we should show them something they have never seen in 3,000 years, something their calculations cannot predict, something that has no optimal counter. What are you suggesting? Met her eyes without flinching. Chaos, Admiral, pure, deliberate chaos. We stop trying to be perfect. We become unpredictable. We become the one thing their ancient doctrine cannot handle. Was silent for a long moment. Outside her window, Earth hung in the blackness of space, blue and fragile and infinitely precious. That sounds like madness, she finally said. Yes, agreed. That is exactly what it is, and madness might be the only weapon we have left. The fleet moved through human space like a slow fire, burning everything it touched. After III came the orbital stations around Jupiter, then the research bases on Europa, then the supply depots scattered through the asteroid belt. Each battle followed the same pattern. Human ships would gather in formation. Ships would counter with the appropriate configuration. Human ships would die. Survivors would retreat. The Empire would advance. High Admiral grew bored with victory. He spent more time studying human culture than planning battles, fascinated by this strange species that kept fighting despite having no chance of winning. They are emotional creatures, he told his officers one evening. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. They form attachments to places and people that serve no strategic purpose. They waste resources on art and music and love. His second-in-command, Fleet Captain, nodded respectfully. Shall we continue the advance, High Admiral? Of course, but there is no hurry. These humans cannot surprise us. They have shown us all their strategies. They have nothing left. The fleet set course for Titan Station, the second-largest military base in human space. It orbited Saturn, protected by 40 warships and defensive platforms that had taken decades to build. The coalition had placed their best commanders there. It was supposed to be the wall that stopped the advance. Admiral watched the approaching enemy fleet from her command center on Luna. Beside her stood Commander Park, who had spent the past 2 weeks explaining his proposal in detail to anyone who would listen. "The admirals think you are insane," said quietly. "They believe your idea will lead to the destruction of our remaining forces." "They may be right," admitted, "but our remaining forces will be destroyed anyway if we keep fighting the same way." On the screen, the Titan defense fleet arranged itself in a crescent formation, closed her eyes briefly. She knew what was coming. They entered attack range and immediately shifted into their 7th configuration. The mathematics of the battle were simple. The crescent could not hold against that particular formation. Every military computer in human space could predict the outcome. The battle lasted 4 hours. 26 human ships were destroyed. Titan Station fell. The survivors limped back toward Luna carrying wounded crews and damaged engines. Another defeat. Another massacre. High Admiral broadcast a message on all frequencies after the battle. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Humans of Earth, we have studied your species carefully. We have observed your tactics, your weapons, your commanders. You fight with courage, but courage is not enough. Your strategies are predictable. Your formations are primitive. You repeat the same patterns again and again, hopping for different results. This is the definition of foolishness." He paused, and when he continued, there was something like pity in his voice. "You have lost 43 warships in the past month. We have lost 7. The mathematics are clear. Your extinction is not a possibility. It is a certainty. We offer you one final chance to surrender. Accept our terms and some of your people will survive to serve the Empire. Refuse, and nothing will remain of your species but dust and memory." The message ended. Across Earth, billions of people watched in silence. Some wept, some raged. Most felt only the cold weight of despair. In the Luna Command Center, the admirals gathered once more. Their arguments had lost all energy. They spoke of fortifying Earth's orbit, of guerrilla tactics, of desperate last stands. No one believed any of it would work. Commander stood at the back of the room, watching. Beside him, Lieutenant gripped her data pad so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "They are going to surrender," she whispered. "I can see it in their faces." "Not yet," replied, "but soon." Admiral stood at the head of the table, her silver hair seeming grayer than it had been a week ago. She looked at the faces of her fellow commanders and saw only exhaustion and fear. "Does anyone have a proposal?" she asked, not expecting an answer. Silence filled the room. Stepped forward. Every eye turned to him, most showing confusion. He was nobody, a patrol commander from the outer territories, a man without reputation or accomplishment. "I have a proposal, Admiral." One of the senior admirals, a heavy man named Go, laughed bitterly. "This is Commander Park, the man who wants us to fight without tactics, the man who believes chaos can defeat order." "Yes," said calmly, "that is exactly what I believe." They have 3,000 years of military experience. They have never lost a war, and you think random movements and broken formations will defeat them. I do not think random movements will defeat them. I think they will confuse them, and confusion is something they have never experienced in battle. Shook his head. "This is foolishness. We would be sending our ships to die for nothing." "Our ships are dying anyway," replied. "Every battle the same result. We form our lines. They counter our lines. We die. If we continue on this path, we will run out of ships within 2 months. What do we have to lose by trying something different?" Admiral raised her hand for silence. The room grew quiet. "Commander Park, you are asking me to give you command of warships. What forces would you require?" "The 7th Fleet," said without hesitation. Gasps filled the room. The 7th Fleet was a collection of damaged ships waiting to be scrapped. 32 vessels with broken engines, missing weapons, and crews traumatized by defeat. It was not a fighting force. It was a graveyard. "Those ships are barely functional," said. I know, that is why I want them. Explain. Walked to the main display and brought up images of the Seventh Fleet, broken hulls, burn marks from enemy fire, missing sections where whole compartments had been destroyed. These ships have nothing left to lose, he said. Their crews have seen the worst they can do. They have been mocked, defeated, humiliated. They are not afraid anymore because they have already experienced everything there is to fear. He turned to face the admirals. Give me these broken ships. Give me these broken people. Let me show you what desperation can accomplish. Admiral opened his mouth to argue, but silenced him with a look. If you fail, she said to, we lose 32 ships and their crews. If we do nothing, we lose everything within 2 months anyway. She was quiet for a long moment, calculating odds that no computer could measure. Very well, Commander Park. The Seventh Fleet is yours. May whatever gods exist have mercy on your soul. Bowed slightly. Thank you, Admiral, but I am not looking for mercy. I am looking for victory. He turned and walked from the room, Lieutenant hurrying to keep pace. Sir, she said quietly as they moved through the corridor, do you really believe this will work? Did not slow his steps. I believe it might work, that is enough. And if it doesn't? He glanced at her, and for just a moment she saw something ancient and tired in his eyes. Then we will die making the question everything they have ever believed about war, and that, Lieutenant, is worth something. The Ganymede shipyard floated in the shadow of Jupiter, a massive structure of metal and light where humanity built its warships. Now it served as a hospital for dying vessels, a place where damaged ships came to be stripped for parts or melted down for scrap. Commander Park stood on the observation deck, watching his new fleet through the thick glass. 32 ships drifted in the repair bays, each one bearing the scars of lost battles. Burn marks covered their hulls. Whole sections were missing. Some had been hit so badly that their original shapes were almost unrecognizable. Lieutenant approached with a data pad. Sir, the crew manifests are ready. We have approximately 4,000 personnel across all ships. Many are wounded. Most have experienced significant trauma. Morale is extremely low. I expected that, said. These are the survivors, the ones who watched their friends die, the ones who escaped when others did not. They carry guilt along with their wounds. How do you plan to lead people who have already been broken? Turn to face her. I don't need to fix them, Lieutenant. I need to aim them. His first order shocked everyone. He called a meeting of all ship captains in the main conference room of Ganymede Station. 31 officers gathered around the long table, their faces showing confusion, suspicion, and exhaustion in equal measure. Captain Iam sat at the head of the group. He was 40 years old, with gray already spreading through his black hair. He had commanded a heavy cruiser at the Battle of Europa and had watched 3 ships die trying to protect his flank. The guilt of survival weighed on him like a physical burden. Commander Park, he said flatly, we have heard rumors about your plan. Some say you intend to attack with random tactics. Some say you are simply insane. Stood at the front of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. Both rumors have some truth in them. A murmur ran through the captains. One woman, Captain Han, laughed bitterly. She had burns covering half her face, souvenirs from an engine explosion during the retreat from Titan. So we are to be led by a madman, she said. How fitting for a fleet of ghosts. You are not ghosts, replied. You are something far more dangerous. You are people with nothing left to lose. He activated the main display. Battle formations appeared on the screen, elegant patterns of ships moving in perfect coordination. They have 47 known configurations, he said. Each one is designed to counter a specific enemy formation. Their tactical computers analyze our positions, identify our strategy, and select the appropriate response. This process takes approximately 3 seconds. We know this, said impatiently. This is why they keep defeating us. Yes, And this is why my first order is to remove the tactical computers from every ship in this fleet." Silence fell over the room. The captain stared at him as if he had suggested removing the engines instead. Spoke slowly as if talking to a child. "Commander, without tactical computers, we cannot coordinate our movements. We cannot calculate firing solutions. We cannot execute any standard formation." "Correct. We will be flying blind." "Also correct." Stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is suicide." "No," said calmly. "Suicide is continuing to fight the same way and expecting different results. The know all our tactics. They have counters for every formation in our database. As long as we fight logically, they will defeat us logically." He stepped closer to the table, meeting the eyes of each captain in turn. "But what happens when we stop fighting logically? What happens when we do things that make no sense? Their tactical computers cannot select a counter formation if there is no formation to counter. Their training does not prepare them for chaos, because chaos is the opposite of everything they believe." Captain Han leaned forward, the burned side of her face catching the light. "You want us to fight like fools. I want us to fight like humans. Messy, unpredictable, creative, everything they have never encountered in 3,000 years of perfect warfare." Lieutenant Sara, a young weapons officer who had been assigned to ship, raised her hand. She was 28 years old, with fresh scars on her neck from a fire that had killed half her gunnery team. "Sir, even if we confuse them, we still need to hit their ships. How do we aim without tactical computers?" "We practice," said. "We train until your gunners can aim by instinct instead of calculation. We run drills until your pilots can feel their ships instead of following programmed courses." He brought up a new display showing training schedules. The captains leaned forward, studying the exercises he had designed. "These drills are strange," admitted. "I have never seen anything like them." "That is because they were never meant for military use. Some are based on ancient Earth sports, where chaos and improvisation determined victory. Others are based on games that children play. A few I invented myself, during 20 years of patrol duty when I had nothing to do but think." Over the following 3 weeks, the 7th Fleet trained harder than any unit in human history. Pushed them constantly, demanding things that would have been considered insane in peacetime. Ships flew in deliberately broken formations. Gunners fired at targets using only their eyes and instincts, without computer assistance. Pilots practiced maneuvers that wasted fuel and exposed weak points, movements so illogical that enemy computers would not be able to predict them. At first, the results were terrible. Ships collided during exercises. Weapons missed targets by enormous margins. Crews cursed their commander and wondered if he was trying to get them killed before they ever faced the enemy. But slowly, something changed. The chaos began to have its own rhythm. Crews learned to read each other without communication. Gunners developed a feel for their weapons that no computer could replicate. Pilots discovered that freedom from logic was also freedom from limitation. Captain found on the observation deck one night, watching a practice exercise through the viewport. "I did not believe in you," said quietly. "I thought your plan was foolish." "And now?" Was silent for a moment. Outside, 2 ships spun through a dance that followed no rules, their movements wild and beautiful and completely unpredictable. "Now I think you might be the most dangerous commander in human history. Either we will die in spectacular failure, or we will change warfare forever." Nodded slowly. "Both outcomes are acceptable. What matters is that we try something new. What matters is that we refuse to surrender." Lieutenant approached with a message pad. "Sir, intelligence reports that the fleet is approaching the asteroid belt known as the Pale. They will reach our defensive range within 5 days." Took a deep breath. The training was over. The theory would now be tested in blood and fire. "Inform all captains," he said. "We move to intercept in 12 hours." Hesitated. "Sir, the crews are exhausted. Some ships still have major damage that we could not repair. We are not ready." "We will never be ready," replied. "That is not the point. The point is to fight anyway. The point is to show the something they have never seen before." He turned to face the viewport one final time, watching his fleet of broken ships and broken people prepare for battle. "Lieutenant, do you know what makes humans special? It is not our intelligence. It is not our technology. It is our capacity for doing things that make no sense. We fall in love with impossible people. We fight for hopeless causes. We believe in things we cannot prove." He smiled, and there was something fierce in his calm face. "They think that is our weakness. They are about to learn it is our greatest strength." The Pale was an asteroid field stretching across 3 million kilometers of space, a graveyard of ancient rocks that had been spinning in darkness since the birth of the solar system. Miners had worked these asteroids for generations, extracting precious metals and rare minerals. Now the mining stations were empty, evacuated when the advance began. High Admiral stood on his command deck, watching the asteroid field grow larger on his viewing screen. Behind him, 200 warships followed in perfect formation, each vessel precisely positioned according to protocols that were older than human civilization. "Long-range sensors detect human ships ahead," reported his tactical officer. 32 vessels positioned within the asteroid field. Felt a flicker of interest. The humans had not tried to make a stand since Titan. He had expected them to keep retreating until there was nowhere left to go. "Show me their formation." The display changed to show the positions of the human fleet. Studied it carefully, searching for the pattern that would tell him which counterformation to deploy. He could not find one. "Analyze their deployment," he ordered. His tactical officer worked in silence for several seconds. When he looked up, confusion showed in his 4 eyes. "High Admiral, I cannot identify their formation. It matches nothing in our records. It appears to be random." "Random?" A secondary eyes narrowed with suspicion. "That is impossible. No commander would position ships randomly. Their configuration is highly inefficient. Several vessels are exposing critical systems to enemy fire. Others are positioned where they will obstruct their own allies. Their firing arcs overlap poorly. It is as if they placed their ships without any strategic thought at all." Fleet captain stepped forward, studying the display. "Perhaps their commander is incompetent. Perhaps they are simply giving up." "Perhaps," said slowly. But something bothered him, a tiny doubt that he could not quite name. He pushed the feeling aside. They had conquered 17 star systems using these tactics. Whatever the humans were doing, it would not save them. "Deploy the 3rd configuration," he ordered. "Standard approach pattern." The fleet began its advance, ships moving into positions that had destroyed countless enemies across 3,000 years. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Park watched the enemy approach through the main. Asteroid rocks drifted slowly around his ship, creating a maze of stone and shadow. "They are entering the field," Lieutenant reported. "They have deployed the 3rd configuration." Nodded, a good choice for enemies in defensive positions. Logical, predictable. "They will be in firing range in 4 minutes. Opened a channel to his entire fleet. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "All ships, this is Commander Park. The enemy is approaching. They believe they know what we will do. They believe they have seen all our tricks. Today, we show them how wrong they are." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Remember your training. Forget everything you learned at the academy. There are no formations. There are no rules. There is only chaos, and chaos is our friend. Fight like the desperate, creative, unpredictable creatures that you are. Fight like humans." The channel closed, turned 2. "Begin." The human ships exploded into motion. Not forward, not backward, every direction at once. Ships scattered like frightened birds, each vessel moving independently with no coordination, no pattern, nothing that could be analyzed or predicted. On the command deck, alarms began to sound. "What are they doing?" demanded, staring at the chaos on his display. The tactical officer's fingers flew across his controls. I cannot determine what they are doing. Each ship is moving randomly. Some are accelerating, some are braking, some are spinning in ways that serve no tactical purpose. Calculate their likely positions for targeting. I cannot. Their movements follow no logic. Our prediction algorithms cannot find patterns in random data. I watched the human ships dance through the asteroid field, weaving around rocks, crossing each other's paths, executing maneuvers that looked like mistakes. "Fire when ready," he ordered. The guns spoke, sending death across the void, but their targeting systems were designed to hit enemies moving in logical patterns. The human ships were not where the computers predicted they would be. Beams of energy sliced through empty space. Missiles struck asteroids instead of hulls. First blood went to the humans. Captain Hand's ship burst from behind an asteroid, weapons blazing. She was not aiming at a specific target. She was spraying fire across the formation, trusting her instincts instead of computers. Two enemy vessels took hits before they could raise shields. Captain IM's cruiser dove straight toward a destroyer, engines burning at maximum. Every rule of combat said this was suicide. The enemy ship prepared for a standard evasive maneuver. Did not evade. He rammed directly into the destroyer's flank, his own shields absorbing most of the impact. Both ships spun wildly from the collision, but crew had already launched escape pods, and those pods were not empty. They carried short-range torpedoes and soldiers with magnetic boots and explosive charges. They had never seen boarding tactics in a space battle. They had no counter-formation for enemies who jumped from ship to ship like pirates from ancient Earth. Lieutenant Sara commanded the weapons on a small frigate that should have been scrapped weeks ago. Her targeting computer was gone, removed on orders. But she had spent 3 weeks training her eyes and hands to work without electronic assistance. She fired in patterns that no computer would ever generate, random bursts that seemed to waste ammunition. But the point defense systems were calibrated to intercept logical attack sequences. Her unpredictable shots slipped through their defenses again and again. Commander's flagship wove through the heart of the battle, broadcasting orders that were not really orders at all. Red Group, do something unexpected. Blue Group, remember that game we played on Tuesday. All ships make them guess. The formation began to break apart. Individual captains, unable to receive guidance from their tactical computers, tried to respond to threats they could not understand. They collided with each other while executing standard evasive maneuvers, because the humans were not doing what standard evasive maneuvers assumed they would do. High Admiral gripped the railing of his command deck, watching his perfect fleet fall into disorder. "This is not warfare," he hissed. "This is madness." Commander's voice came through on an open channel. They had never bothered to encrypt their communications from species they considered inferior, and had taken advantage of that arrogance. "You are correct," High Admiral said. "It is madness, and madness has no counterformation. Your 3,000 years of perfect tactics cannot help you because perfect tactics require a rational enemy. We have chosen to be irrational. We have chosen to be unpredictable. We have chosen to be human." "You are throwing away your ships," I shouted back. "Your losses are terrible." "Yes," agreed, "but your losses are worse. Look at your fleet, High Admiral. Look at what chaos has done to your perfect order." I looked. His beautiful formation was gone, replaced by scattered groups of ships fighting desperately against enemies who would not stay still, would not follow patterns, would not die when the mathematics said they should die. The battle raged for 11 hours. Human ships fell, one by one, their crews fighting until their engines failed or their hulls breached. But the fell too, more than they had ever fallen in a single engagement. When it was over, the asteroid field was filled with wreckage from both fleets. 87 ships were destroyed or disabled. The human Seventh Fleet had lost 29 vessels. High Admiral ordered the retreat. His remaining ships fled toward the outer system, leaving the Pale in human hands. It was the first defeat in 3,000 years. On what remained of his shattered flagship, Commander Park slumped in his chair. Blood ran from a wound on his forehead. His right arm was crushed beneath fallen debris. The ship's life support was failing. But he was smiling. "Lieutenant," he whispered into his communicator, "do you read me?" Static filled the channel. Then faintly her voice broke through. "I read you, Commander. My ship is damaged but intact. We won, sir. We actually won." "Yes," said his vision beginning to blur. "Tell the others, tell them. Chaos works. Tell them humanity works." The communicator fell from his hand as darkness closed in around him. But before he lost consciousness completely, he heard something that made the pain worthwhile. Cheering, human voices, across a dozen damaged ships, celebrating a victory that no one had believed was possible. They had done it. They had made the question everything they believed about war. Nothing would ever be the same. The rescue ships arrived 3 days after the battle. They moved slowly through the debris field, searching for survivors among the twisted metal and frozen bodies. Every few hours, they found another escape pod, another life raft, another miracle. Commander Park was found floating in the wreckage of his flagship, sealed inside an emergency compartment that had somehow maintained pressure. His right arm was crushed beyond repair. His lungs were filled with fluid from internal bleeding. The medics said he should have died hours before they found him. But he was alive, barely. They brought him to Luna Station, to a hospital wing that had been cleared for the heroes of the Pale. He woke 2 weeks later in a white room, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with the sound of life continuing. Admiral was there when he opened his eyes. "Commander Park," she said quietly, "can you hear me?" Tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. A nurse brought water, and he drank slowly before trying again. "We won," he whispered. "You won," confirmed. "The fleet retreated to the outer system. They have not advanced since. Their High Admiral has been recalled to there. Intelligence suggests he will be executed for the defeat." Closed his eyes. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt only a vast, crushing weight. "How many?" he asked. Understood the question. 1,807 crew members did not return. 29 ships were destroyed. 1,807. Let the number sink into his bones. 1,807 people who had trusted him. 1,807 families that would never see their loved ones again. And survivors. 312. Many wounded, some will never fly again. Paused. "They are calling you a hero, Commander. Earth is nomming ships after you. Children are wearing patches with your face. The Coalition has authorized statues in your honor." Turned his head toward the window. Outside, stars burned in the eternal darkness of space. Somewhere out there among those stars, they were watching and waiting and learning. "I am not a hero," he said softly. "I am a man who asked 1,800 people to die for an idea. An idea that worked, an idea that saved humanity." Yes. Eyes were wet with tears he could not control. That is the worst part. If the idea had failed, I could have blamed myself for foolishness. But it worked, which means I was right to send them to their deaths. How do you live with that, Admiral? How do you carry the weight of being correct? Had no answer. She had sent many soldiers to die in her long career. She had learned to carry the guilt like a stone in her heart, always present, never forgotten. "You carry it," she finally said, "because you must, because the alternative was worse, because they knew the price and paid it willingly." Was silent for a long time. The Empire never recovered from the Battle of the Pale. It was not the tactical defeat that broke them, though that was severe enough. It was the psychological wound, the terrible discovery that perfection could be beaten by its opposite. For 3,000 years, they had believed their doctrine was flawless. They had built their entire civilization on the foundation of order and calculation. When that foundation cracked, everything built upon it began to fall. Other species in the galaxy heard about the battle. They learned that they were not invincible. They discovered that chaos could defeat order, that madness could break logic, that the unexpected could shatter the inevitable. Rebellions began on occupied worlds. Former victims found their courage again. The great empire, which had seemed eternal, started to crumble from within. And humanity became something new in galactic politics. Not the strongest species, not the most advanced, not the or the oldest, but unpredictable, creative, willing to break rules that others did not even know existed. Other civilizations began to study human history, hoping to understand how such a young species could defeat such an ancient enemy. They read about Napoleon and Hannibal, about Sun and they learned about human art and music and love and madness. And they were afraid. Commander Park retired from military service 6 months after the battle. His right arm had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic, but the real damage was deeper, in places that no machine could reach. He bought a small house on the eastern coast of Korea, near a village where his grandparents had lived long ago. The house faced the sea, and on clear nights, he could see the stars reflecting on the water like a second sky beneath his feet. He never spoke publicly about the battle. He refused the medals they tried to give him. He did not attend the ceremonies or the celebrations. When journalists came to his door, he sent them away with polite silence. But every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of the Pale, he made one exception. 312 survivors gathered at a memorial on Luna Station. They did not celebrate. They stood in silence before a wall that bore 1,807 names, each one carved in stone, each one a debt that could never be repaid. Lieutenant came every year, even after she became an admiral herself. She had survived the battle against all odds, pulled from her damaged ship by rescue workers who found her unconscious but breathing. In the decades that followed, she became one of the most respected commanders in human history. She taught at the military academy, training new generations of officers in the tactics that had invented. She wrote books and gave speeches and shaped the future of human warfare. But she never forgot the quiet man who had shown her what chaos could accomplish. A reporter asked her once, at the end of a long interview, what she had learned from Commander Park. Thought for a long moment before answering. Through the window of her office, she could see the stars that humans now traveled freely, the galaxy that no longer feared the Empire. He taught me that sometimes the most human thing you can do is refuse to make sense, she finally said. The universe is full of patterns and rules and logic. Every other species tries to master those patterns to become perfect calculators of reality. But humans are different. We are beautiful because we are broken. We are strong because we are strange. She paused, remembering a calm face that never showed fear, even when fear was the only rational response. Commander Park understood something that the never could. He understood that chaos is not the absence of meaning. Chaos is just meaning that has not been recognized yet. And humanity, with all our foolishness and creativity and stubborn refusal to die quietly, we are agents of chaos. She smiled, and there were tears in her eyes. That is what made us dangerous. That is what saved us. That is what makes us human. Far away on the coast of Korea, an old man with a mechanical arm sat on his porch and watched the sun set over the sea. He did not know about the interview. He did not care about his legacy. He was thinking about the 1807 who had followed him into the darkness. He was remembering their faces, their voices, their last moments of courage and fear. He would carry them with him until he died. That was the price of victory. That was the weight of being right. But sometimes, when the stars came out and the sea turned silver beneath the moon, he allowed himself to feel something like peace. They had done it. They had changed history. They had proven that humanity deserved its place among the stars. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species were learning the lesson that they had learned too late. Never underestimate the humans. Never assume you know what they will do. Because humans, in the end, are chaos wearing flesh. And chaos, as Commander Park had proven, always finds a way. The end.